Hi, and welcome to Desis Dragons. My name is Chirag Asnani, and I am here for a very special interview with a very special boy, Rajib Kalita. And
Hello.
yeah, he's a very talented adventure writer. He's made quite a few. One of which we got to actually play the
Right.
Sanjeevi adventure that we managed to play through, and Shubham DM'd. But that was a good fun thing. Something I've had the pleasure of actually playing twice, and the additional pleasure of getting to be your DM, which is always a joy.
Yes. It is. It is a joy for me as well.
Yeah. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. How about you?
I'm good. I get to talk to my friends more. I get to talk to my friends who also I can claim it's work.
Yeah, that's
Let's actually talk about the work. But
right.
because work is fun for us because we got very lucky that we're both getting to be D&D as sort of careers, get to actually do things and put things out in the community, not just playing with each other, but sharing things with the community, which is fun. But how did you get into it? Like, how did you get into the TTRPG space? Like, finding out about D&D and then deciding I want to actually put stuff out into the community and not just enjoy, which is fine. But you went the extra level.
Getting like if you are asking getting into TTRPG space in terms of getting into D&D and starting to play D&D, I suppose that was about 3 years ago, and my introduction to D&D was through basically Stranger Things. I know it is something that I think it is something that is common for a lot of people.
Mhm.
So that is where I saw it first. I think a lot of people picked it up from Big Bang Theory as well, but I think I stopped watching that after the second season. So that wasn't me.
For a lot of people, it's like Stranger Things, Community, Big Bang Theory, or being very unpopular in high school. The last one was me.
Yeah.
Or Critical Role also.
I was actually talking about this yesterday. There was a episode in IT Crowd, and this was much before. I had seen this long before, and I had no idea what D&D was. But they had an episode where they had a D&D session, and actually, it was a really, really good game of D&D, despite it being like a very, very slapstick comedy show. But no matter. Yeah, so it was Stranger Things first, and then actually it was Critical Role. That is when I started. I saw it, and then I saw how fun it could be, and I desperately started looking for a way to play D&D, but I couldn't find live. And for a long time, I thought that in sitting here in Mumbai, I wouldn't find anyone. Like there are no people here who would play D&D because at least at that time there were no communities like we have now. Like we have our Panic Knots and all the Desis and Dragons and Discord communities on Discord and all that. So I started playing online through something called Play by Post (PvP).
Yeah.
So there are these forums, and specifically the forum that I played most was something called rpgcrossing.com. I mean, it's still there; it still thrives.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's a different sort of like the gameplay loop is a little different from your standard D&D. It is less about the improv aspect of D&D and like having on the spur, even less about the combat part of it, and more about developing stories and developing relationships and writing well. I think my English improved a lot during that time. So that's where I started, and that's where I was for about a year or so. But then I finally found some people through Reddit. And randomly, it was r/Mumbai basically, and that is where I found some people, and it was Dave. I don't know how many of us know here, but yeah, Dave was my first DM. I found him on Reddit. I asked him, "Do you play D&D?" He invited me over, and we met at what's the place near Kharod Station?
Oh, I don't think I played there, but yeah.
It is like a hunting ground for like D&D players, like a stomping ground. It used to be.
Yeah, not stomping ground. Don't make us seem too predatory.
Not right now, but yeah, it used to be. So yeah, then I started playing a few one shots and then got into some campaigns and all that, and eventually I started DMing as well. So yeah, and I have been playing continuously for the past 3 years. How I got into writing stuff for D&D is a slightly different story. This happened last year. I was introduced to something called RPG Writer Workshop, and I remember who this was by. This was by Alika. Alika had posted about this in our WhatsApp group. DM Kabal.
Alika, who plays with us on in Desis and Dragons.
Yes, she is. And I think she is quite well known in our community anyways.
Yeah.
like artist extraordinaire. I have worked with her on some projects later, and it was like a lot of fun. So yeah, anyways, she had posted about this thing, and then I thought, yeah, this could be something interesting. I joined it. So RPG writer, they have changed their name and a little bit of their profile now. It is now called the Storytelling Collective. They have expanded to something beyond merely TTRPGs, but at the time it was the RPG writer workshop. It still happens twice a year, and I joined the July workshop. So it's like a month-long thing where they have almost daily lessons, which covers all the aspects of like creating an adventure for D&D, and not necessarily D&D, other tabletop systems as well. But they go step by step, and at the end of it, the expectation is that you are going to write and publish a module, a one shot. Like that is the expectation. It can be less, it can be more, but a one shot for whatever system that you're writing for, and get it published.
Mhm.
And I managed to do that. It was a little tight. It is a little stressful, but yeah. But then the community is like really, really awesome on Discord, the RPG writers community. So they will have a lesson. They will have published writers and well-known names in the TTRPG space creating these lessons, and then there will be exercises at the end, and they will hang out in the Discord for the whole day, working with people, trying to develop their ideas, giving feedback and all that. So all of that was like really, really awesome. So I learned my ropes there, and at the end of it, I published an adventure which I called The Disappearance of Esme. So, and I liked it, the whole process. I thought, yeah, this probably is something that I could do. I have always been a big fan of like narratives and stories and stuff like that. All my games that I run, I tell my players beforehand that this is going to be a narrative focused game, probably less combat focused. If you're expecting like a dungeon crawl, this is not the game for you. So I start off that way, and so it kind of fell into my strengths in a way. So I continued on. After Esme, I wrote another book which is set in the same world. And in fact, actually, both Esme and the next book that I wrote, Ratcatchers, these are based on the second adventure that I ever ran. So this, again, it was a homebrew one shot that I had run in Panic Knot. So it both came from that game that had actually run. So in a way, I had already play tested it. So I kind of put all of it into this book, and yeah, and that's where it started, and it continued on.
No, of course, important to like write what you know, and that adventure pretty well. And I've read Esme like pretty like while you were still like writing it before you published it, and I can tell that you put a lot of like stuff that was like personal to you, like to your like things like from your culture, things that you really like. Like I think that was one with quite a bit of Lovecraft was in it, or like at least that kind of.
That was another one. That was the Cup of Sorrow that had some Lovecraftian elements, but also you're right that I put some things from my background, because it was set in a tea garden, tea estate, and I from being from Assam am quite familiar with the like what goes on there. It's not all good. There are like, of course, I mean, it's a industrial kind of situation where exploitation happens. So I tried to bring some of it into this. Actually, that was in the first workshop in July. That was the first one that I conceived, and I started working on this Cup of Sorrow. But I realized it's going to be a little too large an endeavor to finish in a month. So that is when I shifted to Esme midway through the workshop, because Esme was something I was familiar with, and that is what got published first. But then I came back to Cup of Sorrow in the next workshop.
Definitely. And I do want to circle back to like how you like your history, your culture, the thing that inspired you for us about where you came from for a Cup of Sorrow.
Right. I was just having fun through the entire process. Part of it was just the process of writing, process of like putting down words and trying to build. There was a bit of world building. There's a bit of building scenarios, trying to create something that is quite visceral for the DM to kind of then narrate to the players. And then part of it was just a community. Like I said, it was like so supportive. Whenever like you could always if you are feeling like if things are going a little difficult for you, you could always ask for support, and they would support in whatever way. So all of that did contribute. And I was just having fun.
That's good.
Most of all, yeah.
That's important, like having fun while you're doing it, because otherwise, part of the reason like why you're doing it. But for people who are like doing it, from your experience like writing it the first time out, do you have any insight you want to share with to other adventure writers or wannabe adventure writers?
Right. So, I mean, in the end, writing an adventure is not really different from the adventures that DMs create for their gaming table every single session. It's just that you are first of all, your target audience is the DM. So, I'm guessing if you are attempting to write an adventure, you are already a DM. I mean, that would probably be most certainly true. So then you already have the point of view of your audience. So that is like a really big strength that you already have. So ultimately, you have to think about why is the DM going to pay money to buy an adventure from you, and then you use it in the gaming table instead of kind of just coming up with a story on their own. The most probable reason for this is that they are looking to save time. Probably they do not have enough time to come up with something completely out of whole cloth, and they need some maybe narrative inputs, maybe some kickoff point to start the whole to take it to the table. So if that is the case, then your job as a writer is to make things as easy as possible for the DM. So the adventure, whatever you have written, it should be kind of self-sufficient. It should not be like the DM has to refer to 5 different books in order to kind of run your adventure. Like just going through it, they should be able to have a good idea of how to take it forward and how to approach. Like obviously you cannot a plan that a DM has that also fails at with the first contact of the players. So this is even doubly so because it is filtering through first the DM and then onto the table. So you cannot cover every possible scenario, obviously, but you have to put in the effort to cover a lot of different cases that are possible. There is a certain path, but the players decide to go another way. You have to give the DM at least some inputs as to how to tackle such a scenario, which is something that could be likely. So for this, something that is really, really helpful, it's something that is essential for me at least. So we, in the workshop, we learned a lot of different tools that helps to kind of to manage the project, basically project management tools in a way, ideation tools, brainstorming tools, and so on. But one thing that I have found invaluable is a flowchart, basically. So that helps visualize all of these different parts. And it also helps you visualize maybe if you make a flowchart and it looks like just one straight line, maybe that is probably not the right way to go. That means you are constraining everything into a very set path, which, I mean, you're railroading things basically.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't want to railroad too hard. Like you want them to get to the end, but you don't want to eliminate freedom.
Exactly. So you will have different node points on the flowchart where things will diverge and then return back somehow. So you have to create opportunities for all of those within the narrative. So that flowchart really, really helps, at least to me. And then so I start there and then I kind of start to expand on it. And as I write down the things change in the flowchart and I go back and amend it. So all of that back and forth does happen. It will not be a final thing. But I at least usually start with a flowchart because that helps me tackle all the many of the different scenarios that could happen and also make sure that the structure that I'm building is sound.
Yeah. I imagine playing it, you when you're imagine the flow through, you think how could I break this if I was a player? How would I mess this up and how would I make up for that if something happened? You've been a player. I've seen how you try and do things in my games. And you've been a DM, so you know how players can wreck your game. So you understand what someone can do. You don't always set out to set the world on fire, but somehow it keeps happening with you guys.
It does,
yeah. It must be, I guess, doubly secure because when someone's running an adventure that you've written, they might feel like it's got to be more durable than if they came up with something themselves to an extent, or at least more flexible. Like the room to be flexible.
Yes.
That makes sense. But so that's the adventure, how you wrote the adventures, how you planned it, how you got to it. But how was it actually publishing the adventure? How did you publish it? What path did you take? Do you have any advice about publishing the adventure? Because I know very little about that, to be honest, but I'd really like to hear about it.
There are some like IPR issues associated with publishing. There are some technical and legal issues there. Writing an adventure is probably the easier part. But yeah, I actually did want to point out something there about writing and about the aspect of writing an adventure. So there are two elements to that. There is your narrative, but there is also the mechanical aspect of it. So you have to be careful about the mechanical elements of your adventure as well. Like for example, like if you read the descriptions of spells and magic items in your DMG or your monster manual, you will find that they are very, very meticulously worded. Each and every, like meticulously and economically worded. Each and every word in a sentence that will describe the effect of a spell will have a certain ramification. Like it will set limitations on the spell. So that is something that should be learned. So if you are creating a magic item or a creature or anything else, environmental effect, whatever, for your adventure, you have to be sure that what you are trying to convey like passes, like goes across to the DM and then onto the table. And for that, you have to be careful about the wordings. So that mechanical aspect is also another thing that you have to take care when you're writing an adventure. So yeah, that's just one thing I wanted to say. But yeah, now moving on to the publishing aspect. So if you're writing content for D&D, and actually my experience has been in D&D, so I cannot really speak for other systems. Mm-hmm. But in case of D&D, there are primarily two paths that you can take. The first is as a community creator for DM's Guild. So dmsguild.com is a website which is affiliated with Wizards of the Coast, the publishers of D&D. And they have kind of, if you are publishing as like a community creator for DM's Guild, then you have access to certain intellectual property that you do not have otherwise. For example, you can use the settings of Forgotten Realms, Eberron, or Ravenloft, and use the elements from those settings, like the people and places and things like that, and then like create your adventure, whatever content that you're writing, and then publish it on DM's Guild. You also have access to certain assets like art and things like that is provided free of cost to creators that you can just put in your adventure and like just publish it. But the flip side is that if you're publishing at DM's Guild, on DM's Guild, DM's Guild takes 50% of the royalty share. So whatever price whatever you price your product, DM's Guild is going to take 50%. I'm sure Wizards will take a part of it. I don't know how much. And then you get 50% of it. The second option, the second path is using something called OGL, which stands for Open Gaming License. So OGL is not, again, exclusive to D&D or 5e. It is something that exists for a lot of different TTRPGs. So, and the specific aspects of it depends on the system. But in D&D, there is something called a SRD, System Resource Document. So this is something that is a PDF that you can download from the Wizards site. And basically, this is the content that is freely available to use by any creator. It contains the core mechanics, not all of it, but the core mechanics. It contains a bestiary, which contains a limited selection of monsters. It contains a selection of spells and things like that. So any content in the 5th edition SRD, you can use freely. In fact, if you want, you can just take the whole thing and publish it in your name. That is also possible. It wouldn't make sense, but yeah, you can. So if you are writing using the Open Gaming License, you can use whatever is in the SRD, and also you can create your own intellectual property. But you cannot you cannot use any other intellectual property that belongs to D&D and put in your adventure. Yeah. If you are putting something that is close to it, you'll have to kind of reflavor it or rename it and change the wording and things like that. For example, in Disappearance of Esme, so the second chapter, there's this like dungeon basically where the players have to go in, and there is some conflict happening there. But then it is I originally envisioned it as a Meanlock lair, like lair of Meanlocks, because I mean Meanlocks are very, very cool creatures, very, very freaky, very, very scary. So I wrote the whole thing using that, but then I later realized that no, I cannot use Meanlocks because they are not in the SRD. So I had to kind of change them into tooth fairies. Basically, I thought, yes, maybe this would work. So I kind of just reflavored as tooth fairies, changed the mechanics somewhat, and it became something equally creepy. But yeah, so
I
you
like
have
how
to do things like that.
if anyone's seen a picture of a mean look and they look at that and they think Tooth Fairy, there is something very wrong with you, and I want you to
No. I don't know how. I don't know if I can share my screen or anything. I can show you the tooth fairy image that I made. So it is creepy.
Yeah.
It's not that. Maybe we'll do that later.
But later, definitely. That
Right. So
good.
yeah,
That's amazing.
So basically, you'll have to build an understanding of where you can be and how much you can deviate, how much leeway you can get when you're writing either for OGL or DMs Guild. There's DMs Guild. There's one more thing. You cannot. You have to write either for the settings that I mentioned, Faerun, Ravenlock, and Eberron, or it has to be setting neutral. So again, this is something that I face personally. Search for Sanjeevani, the adventure that you ran. So I actually, before publishing it, I did clear with a representative of DMs Guild. I sent her a work in progress copy and asked if this is okay to publish in DMs Guild. Obviously, it is not a generic setting. It is somewhat of a specific setting, but I did include some material there, which basically instructs a DM how to transpose this to Forgotten Realms or other generic setting and all that. So I went to went that distance, and then it was published on DMs Guild. But later somebody else reviewed it and decided, no, actually this does not satisfy the terms and conditions of publishing on DMs Guild. So I had to take it to Drive Through RPG, and I probably lost some sales because of that. But yeah, that happened. So
you're just not bland enough. You're too spicy. There's too much spice in there. It wasn't generic enough.
Yeah.
So where do you publish then? If you're looking to publish adventures, where do you end up publishing?
Right. So if you're going the OGL path, I mean, you can publish anywhere you like, but the most common one is Drive Through RPG. Actually, DMs Guild and Drive Through RPG are sister sites. They both belong to the same umbrella, one bookshelf. But Drive Through RPG is the OGL site where. But the thing with that, again, there are pros and cons to each. Drive Through RPG has content from not just D&D, but basically every TTRPG system. So if somebody is going to Drive Through RPG randomly, they are not looking specifically for D&D content. They're looking for any like TTRPG content. So the how much your product is going to be visible, you have to kind of think about that. Whereas DMs Guild is specifically for D&D 5th edition. So if somebody is going to DMs Guild, they are specifically looking for D&D 5e content. So again,
it's a balance between it's royalties and limited creative restrictions, and also publicity, like how you're seen, how
visibility,
easier the people see you. Yeah,
which is extremely important, I have to say, in my experience. So yeah.
Oh, of course. So now you've how many adventures have you published now at this point?
No, so actually I started off writing all this. What you can call solo projects. But then I published the Rat Catchers and the Elsmiths and all that. And they were sort of set in a generic European setting, the kind of traditional D&D kind of a setting. But after a while, I realized while writing Cup of Sorrow and thinking of other things that I could write, that, there's so much rich cultural history, myths, mythologies, so much richness in my own culture. Like stories that I grew up with, stories that my grandma, my aunts used to tell me when I was like a little kid. They're so rich and so multifaceted, multidimensional. That is one of the strengths of our literature. So I thought, why should I, as like an Indian sitting in Bombay, write things that are based on European myths and mythology, when if I can take my own experiences and feel so much better while writing it. So that is when I kind of started to shift towards creating content that was more rooted in our Indian myths and mythos. Not necessarily myths and mythos, because I wrote some stuff that are not connected with myths, but still very, very rooted in the Indian setting, milieu, whatever.
Yeah.
Yes. And present day circumstances as well, you might say. So yeah, so I started writing things of that aspect. So I had like the Ramayanas and thing like Ramayana tales and all published. But then I again like something that really helps you grow. And if you would consider this as an advice, maybe you could, is collaborations. And the first collaboration I did, in fact, was with Shubham. Shubham and Alika, in fact. And like after the first workshop, we decided that, yeah, we should maybe do something together. All three of us had published our solo adventures during that first workshop. And then we thought, yeah, let's do something and something that like speaks to us more. So that is when we like created this adventure, which was again very like India based. Alika did some like excellent, incredible artwork for it. So we did that, and so then I was so happy with the experience. Just so I like look for more opportunities like this where I could collaborate or maybe be part of something bigger and contribute. So like how I got them was like kind of basically through Twitter, and there is a Discord a group as well of creators for D&D. So there usually a lot of people do put up these kind of posts asking for collaborators. So I met with a few of those, and so from there I kind of got into some of this collaboration projects. So basically, if you ask how many adventures I've published, it's difficult to say because yeah, some of them are part of something bigger and things.
Of course,
like that. Yeah.
So yeah.
But like yeah, sorry. No, go ahead.
Yeah. So what's it been like the difference between like publishing adventure, which is just from your mind with a page, and then collaborating? Like how's that different? Like what's the difference like in the process? Like do you prefer it? Do you prefer to work on your own? It's just like there's pros and cons. What are your thoughts about it?
I mean, I see like many more pros than cons, definitely. So far, it has been all pros actually. It will probably depend. I mean, if you land up in a bad group or something, that might be a con. But so far, my experience has been like stellar. So even in fact, in when I wrote Ramayana Tale Search for Sanjeevani, that was also a collab project, you could say, because I was a writer on it, but there was a person called John who was helping me. So he edited my book and. So, I mean, you could have different kinds of editing, right? You have something called copy editing where you just go through and check for grammar and proofreading and things like that. But there's something called developmental editing as well, where the editor kind of sits with you from the beginning of the process and kind of steers you in the right direction. If you're maybe not sure about something, you can like work with your editor, discuss and like develop things and things like that. So he was a development editor for it, and I learned so much. He's somebody with tons of experience in writing for TTRPGs, and he shared all of that with me. So more than anything, all of this collaboration have been incredible learning opportunities for me. So that was that. Then I took part in something called Unbreakable. So Unbreakable is a project that is run by a variety of people, but basically, it is an attempt to bring Asian stories to D&D and other TTRPGs spoken by Asian voices, like from Asian voices. So the history of D&D has not been really good regarding bringing stories of cultures that the writers were probably not the white American writers are not probably familiar with. There have been attempts in the past editions where they have created Oriental adventures.
Oh yes, the Oriental adventures. Yes,
right, and they have. I mean, frankly, they are quite pathetic. So this was a reaction to that kind of Unbreakable, where you could expect a sense of authenticity because they are coming from people who grew up.
But yeah, like you were talking about like how they did the Oriental adventures, the setting of Karator after D&D back. It's like. It's very bad, like seeing those kind of things. But like when I was growing up playing like D&D and RPGs like Scion, which was like about mythologies and everything, I was so desperate for like anything remotely Indian, I would have taken it. But even then, when I was starting out, Karator was out of date. Like I don't think they had anything at that point. So it was like there is nothing like really properly Indian, which is why for a large period of my time, I didn't play like I usually played what's it called, monstrous character, because I was like I don't have anything in common with. Like all the humans and elves and things are like, so I'll be like, I'll be an orc. I'll be I'll be like, thanks. You know, I don't feel monstrous. It's like nothing fit me. And like, so I pull up here and I was like, I was the weird one. I was the thing because I wasn't depicted in my fantasy RPGs or my
Exactly.
So it's really cool hearing about Unbreakables. Like it's coming from that voice. So like when you're reading it, you don't feel like, oh, this is an outsider trying to examine me. Like, no, these are people who get me or get a part of my identity, and like it's something to resonate. It's like, makes you feel more welcome in the community.
Exactly. I mean, at that point, it becomes much more than a game. It's like you are entering a fantasy universe. So why would you not play something that you would connect with so much more than something that is completely disconnected? So yeah, it comes from all of that, from that point of view. They have Unbreakable Volume 1. They had out for a while, but they decided they're going to expand. They're going to do 3 volumes at the same time. Like they will start working on 3 volumes. So 4 volumes, 4 volumes. But I sent 3 pitches. They asked for pitches on Twitter. I sent 3 pitches, and actually all 3 of those got accepted. So the first one of those has come out. It's called Unbreakable. It's an anthology of 7 adventures. It's called Unbreakable Revolutions. And from the name, you can guess that it is, the stories are more focused on like taking it to the man and things like that, basically revolutions. So and my specific adventure is, in fact, it's probably could be a little dangerous and risky for me if it was some other platform, because it speaks about caste and oppression of indigenous people by and not by foreign colonials, but by our own people. So that's what it deals with.
Wow.
That was a little difficult to write. When I wrote, I had to be angry. I wrote it angry, literally, because I had to build up that anger in me in order to kind of put it down. So yeah, that was an interesting experience. But the other 2 that I've written, they are much more chilled out. So
you didn't have to be so angry for that.
No, I didn't have to be so angry. In fact, one of the adventures that I've written, again, I cannot speak a lot about these because a lot of these are under NDA, the ones that are not out yet. But one of the adventures that I've written, it's like literally my childhood. Like the events and encounters and incidents and stories that are there in that adventure, they're things that I myself experienced when I used to go to my uncle's place and stay in the village, and just the things that I used to see. It's literally all of that. So I mean, at least for me, it was like so much fun just putting it down. And I mean, if somebody somewhere, like maybe some white guy somewhere, like reading it and playing it, would be like so gratifying to me. Like my childhood, somebody else is experiencing. I can't even imagine when that would happen. So all of this, basically. So that is why I thought that just sharing my own experiences is so much more gratifying. And the other thing is, we have seen, there is a distinct lack of representation of cultures that are not mainstream American. So somebody has to write, right? Somebody has to do it. And what I thought is, if not me, then who?
Yeah.
So basically, that is
definitely. And it's not there in the market. People will want it. And so we have to give it to them.
That is also true. That is also true.
Yeah, it's not there. People don't know what they're missing out on. They're used to bland, but then we come in, we bring the spice, we bring the
spice.
Yes. Oh my God, how did I live without this?
Yeah.
That's incredible. Let's see. Those are very good, like how your culture was influencing your thing. You've told us about as much as you could. Without violating NDAs. But like for anyone else, like, do you have any advice for how, if they come from, because not everyone's come from your exact culture, but everyone has like their own culture, their own thing that they might want to share, like in a published, like writing it down for others. Do you have any advice on how to do it? Because like what you were describing is like, you were very vulnerable, you're very open about your past, about your thing. Like, do you have any advice for like, how people can look at their culture, like, oh, there is something of value to share. Like, do you have any advice on how to get them to share their culture? Any tips on how to, adapt their cultures for TTRPG writing?
Like as far as adventures are concerned, it's ultimately the narrative, right? It's the story, and ideally, it shouldn't be like something that you just pick from existing stuff. I mean, I myself find more creative satisfaction building on things that exist already. Like, the Ramayana book, for example. It's not a story that is there, but it builds on a story that exists. I mean, the Hanuman carrying the Sanjeevani and coming to the aid of Lakshman, who was dying. That is a story that does exist. But I thought, what happens 20 years after the war ends? What if there is another war? And what happened to all the people that was in the army, in the great army? What happened to them after the war? The war is over. Now there is peace. Now, but where do you go now? So it is always more, at least to me, more satisfying to take a base that exists. And again, there is no dearth of these rich, extremely rich and three-dimensional stories that are there in our epics and all the stories that we have heard since childhood. But then maybe build on it, create something that hopefully enriches it and takes it to another level. And so that is one aspect of it, the narrative. But then you have to also make it into an adventure, make it into something that the players are going to experience on the table. So it will not be the DM sitting and reading out a book, right, to the players while they sit passively. Yeah. It will have to be much more interactive than that.
Yeah, it's not a museum tour. It's like it's an experience you're actually going through. It's not like, oh, look at this fascinating dal that they all ate back in those days. Exactly. Isn't that like they're outside? No, they're living. It's got to be something that they can do. They can experience that kind of adventure, that kind of culture.
Yeah, there is plus there is the gameplay aspect and all that. It has to be a fun adventure as well. So all of that you have to take care of. But if I can think of a specific example, and this is something that John, who I worked with for the Ramayana adventure, he had pointed out. You have played it and twice, so you would know. Shubham has run it. So there are these small encounters in the beginning, right? There is the game of Pachisi. There is the Yagya that is going on. There is the food tent, the mess hall with the delectable spread of Indian dishes and all that. So this is something that he had encouraged me to add. These encounters, which very quickly places the players in this very, very particular kind of setting. Otherwise, the rest of the adventure, I mean, the actual the flow of the adventure is kind of generic. Right, you are looking for a MacGuffin, you go there, you fight the bad guy, get the MacGuffin back. What differentiates this is the setting. So you have to put in those elements and you have to decide which is the best place to put in those elements that are very, very particular to that culture, and use them to probably inform players who are not familiar with it. And if they are familiar with it, give them that sense of belonging to all of those things.
Yeah, and few things are as stimulating for the Desi culture than food. So I understand why you went for food.
I keep some aspect of food in all my adventures because it is the foods and smells and these. That is also another very interesting point. Like these things, they are so evocative. Smells are so evocative. Like get those descriptions in those very, very particular things that you have grown up with, that you're so familiar with, and you want to share it with people. So just put those things in. Just add the spices, basically. Fill it with masala.
Get the masala, get it in your ears. We can get some Desi music playing while you
Flavor.
Yeah. That's all. you mentioned a little bit of like a pushback initially when they said, "Oh, your setting's not bland enough for us," when you were writing for your DMG. Right.
I can't call it a pushback. It was like the terms and conditions. So
But did you feel like any other point while you were writing or like publishing, did you feel like there was a challenge in like trying to introduce like non-Eurocentric setting to the audiences, like when you're introducing like names and locations that weren't like, oh, this is Sir John, and like, no, this is Rajib, this is Is it Rohil? Did you feel like, or like, oh wait, did you feel like, oh, people aren't going to get that because they're not, the names are, did you feel like any challenges, like any of your ideas while you were writing at any time while you were writing or publishing the adventure?
No, actually not.
Any of your adventures?
Not at all. Like, I have gotten in touch with a large community of D&D creators through Twitter, not otherwise. But it has always been like extremely supportive. At least the people that I communicate with. I'm sure there would be some people, but I tend to think that the people who play D&D and TTRPGs, they are of a more open mind, at least. So I don't think there would be, at least I have never faced any pushback in that regard.
Yeah.
But I mean, as regards to names and all, I always like try to put a pronunciation guide and things like that. So because again, the people who are running this thing, they would not want to be insensitive and pronounce names wrong. So it is always good to have a pronunciation guide. In fact, the ones that I've written for Unbreakable, there is like literally the alphabets, the vowels, and all the sounds that correspond to each vowel, and that keys into the pronunciation. So yeah, so all of that is always good to provide.
I might need that for daily life. My accent's already too colonial. I might need to fix that.
I will send you the pronunciation guide. It might help.
Please. That's excellent. So that was something else I wanted to focus on. But yeah, so that's a really exciting stuff that's happening. But besides, you've already mentioned that you're working on 2 more pitches for the Unbreakable anthology, right? Is there anything else that you're working on that you can share with us? Like, what's the next exciting thing that we can expect from you, Pidgey?
I have. I'm trying to get something done, but like things have been a little crazy lately, actually, for a while now. I mean, I've talked with you during our games as a DM. So work-wise, things have been a little difficult. So I have had to take a hiatus basically for a couple of months now. I am not really working on anything right now as of now. I hope I can find time soon because there are things that I want to work on. There are projects that I want to get to, seeds of things that I have in mind. But at this moment, unfortunately, no, I am not working on anything because of lack of time.
For now. But give it time. Those seeds will germinate.
But yeah, I'm working with my adventures for Unbreakable are written, they're done, but I'm working with the editors, I'm working with artists. They have again an incredible array of artists. Alika is one of them. So I'm working with the artists to get the artwork done. So things like that, yeah, things are moving, but yeah.
Excellent.
Not very active.
That's good to know. Where can people follow you and find out more of your stuff, like your website or your Twitter page, so that we can let people know about you? You got anything like that?
I have a Twitter page, but again, like I said, things have been a little difficult for some time, so I have not been on Twitter for a while. But on Twitter, I'm Undead Rajib 1.
Ooh.
I'm Undead Rajib 1 because Undead Rajib without the 1 also belongs to me, but I forgot the password, so I had to create a new account. And I forgot that I had that.
You could have said this because I'm number 1. We would have believed you. You don't have. I know you like being honest with your community, but sharing so much of yourself.
We're going to edit it. I'm Undead Rajib 1 because I'm number 1. All right, the number 1 Undead Rajib of the world.
Keeping all of that in.
That's why I'm on Twitter, and I have I think we can call it a portfolio site with my TTRPG stuff. I think the screenshot was shared on the Discord as well. That is undeadrajib.crd.co. CRD is like basically card. So I guess you can put some of these links where people can find them.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically that.
That sounds good. And also, you've actually before we send you out, there's something I just remembered now. You've already described your pronunciation guide to try and help your stuff be more accessible for other people. Do you have any, besides that, any tips or tools that other people can use to make the stuff more accessible, in your work?
Accessible. I don't know if this is what you're asking, but accessibility is also something that we learned during the workshop, like making your adventures more accessible to everyone. And that is something that goes actually far beyond just writing adventures. That is something that I have imbibed in my life. I mean, whenever I put up a tweet if there is an image, I make sure that I put alt text to it. So things like that. So accessibility is very important. There are resources that you can get to in order to make your work that you're putting out more accessible. Where the things, all the adventures that I've put out, there is usually the main PDF with all the images and everything. There is usually a printer-friendly black and white version. And there's also accessible version that is accessible in terms that it is readable by text-to-voice programs, basically.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, for access of the visually impaired. So when you are doing something like that, there are certain, again, you will find resources for this online if you're looking for it. But things like making sure that like tags and headings and things like that, like you're creating a tag PDF so that this program can recognize what section is where, and that people can navigate easily. So those things are there. There are things like making things accessible for people who have problems like dyslexia. There are certain protocols that you need to follow in order to make things accessible to basically everyone. So that is something very, very important. That is something I learned during the workshop, and that is something I try to follow whenever I'm putting something out.
Yes. That's really good stuff. I think that's all all the questions that we got that I've got for you right now. Thank you so much for talking to us on Desis and Dragons and like telling us about what it's like to be posting an adventure. I think we're gonna have a lot of people who see this. They're gonna start sharing their own culture, doing their own thing, which is gonna be great.
I really hope. Yes.
Yeah. Because for the laziest DMs like me, just having a published adventure is just like so much fun, especially when I know it's a quality thing. Because I've seen your stuff and it's quality. I played it's so good. I played one twice. Yeah, that's true.
Yep.
But still, thank you so much, and I hope we can have a chat with you again later in time. And I can't wait to see the next two adventures in the Unbreakables.
Right. Thank you so much for having me. It was great talking to you.
And thank you guys for watching.